Alrighty folks, here we are again. Robert Hutchcraft, Sean Holman, Advanced Hearing Technologies how-to videos. Today we're going to talk about how to retube mold. A lot of people have custom BTEs, and those devices have a custom mold, and that mold's made of an impression of your ear. And every now and again we need to look at the tube. You can see that this is a brand new tube, and it's flexible. It's very, very pliable, and it moves all around. It's a brand new tube. And so you can see that it runs into the back of the mold, and then it comes all the way to the front and exits out into your ear canal. So there's the end of that tube. What happens is sunlight, air dries it out, the oils from your skin start to react on that tubing, and what it starts to do is make it rigid. That changes the way it sounds. It will eventually crack open, which will instantly allow the hearing aid to start squealing or cause feedback. A number of things can cause, problems can be created by having a bad tube. And so what we're going to do now is retube this hearing aid. So I'm going to have Sean take the tube from the BT itself, and it should just kind of wiggle loose. It just presses on there. Now what he's going to do is pull this tube out. Now what I'm going to say first here, Sean, is a lot of time these tubes can be glued in. We've seen them even with super glue, which you should never use. They make a proper cement to put this in, and it should be easy to get out. Now we have a reaming tool that it's actually just a bit, and most people have drill bits. It's a fairly small bit, and it fills down in there. Now, Sean, run that reaming tool into that sound hole and show them just kind of a little bit, demonstrate what you have to do if you got a super glue. You can drill this out. The case of the mold itself is very durable, and if it has to be done, so if you want to do it at home, you can. Now, once you get that reamed out there, you can pull that tube on out of there, and now you throw that old tube away. You take your new tube, and a new tube is always feathered at the end. This is so you can guide that tube through that hole and then have something to pull it all the way through with. Now, here's something very important before we do this. There's two holes a lot of times on molds. The bottom hole on this happens to be the vent. This is the air passage. It allows air and low frequencies to just travel from the outside of your ear to the inside of the ear. The other hole is for the tube. So please remember which hole you dragged your tube out of. You don't want to retube it through the vent. So let's take our little feathered end there and slide it in. Actually, we're going to retube this wrong to begin with. And so Sean, turn that tube a little bit to the right and tube that wrong for us. And see, Sean's just taking that and pulling it through. Now let's take a look. Hold that in the upright position, Sean. And right now we're looking at this mold like it fits into someone's ear. Can anyone identify the problem here? The tube taking the sound from the speaker of that hearing aid to your ear is pointing downward or off to the left. The hearing aid is going to be above your ear, and when you're done, that tube has to point directly straight up the helix of that. Let's pull that out. And we're going to re-thread it so that when you pull that thread through, it'll go straight up that helix. Point to the helix for us, Sean. Right up there. That's that line. That points directly towards the top of the hearing aid. And so that tube, once it's pulled through, has to go towards the top of that hearing aid. And you'll see, Sean the pro as he is, as he pulls this through, bam, beautiful. And so let's just hold that out there and show what that looks like. Right there's a properly fitted tube. Now Sean, take those scissors and trim that off there at the end. Let's trim it off, leaving just a smidge at the end, and we'll talk about why. That's a smidge. We can extend this tube a little bit, and even even more than what we've got here, if we want to get closer to the eardrum. This is a very good way, keeping that tube long, even 1/8 of an inch longer than the inside will allow you to get closer to that eardrum, and doggone it, insertion gain is a good thing. The closer you can get the output of that sound, or where that sound leaves that device, in this case it's going to be the end of this mold, the closer that point becomes to your eardrum, the less volume you'll need to perceive the same amount of power. And so let's trim that off the rest of the way, make that nice and flush. Most people won't need that, and we want to make it nice and flush. Okay, now you can see we've got a long tube, and that has to be sized up. And so for our next scene, I'm going to use my buddy Sean, and I'm going to size this up, and I'm going to show you exactly how to trim this off and how to measure it so that you cut it, and when you put this together, you got a new tube. It's all properly put together, and you're not going to have any problems. And so that's what we're going to do next. Okay, now we got Sean's mug in the picture, and I'm going to continue to fit this mold. Again, as you can see, the tube, we've trimmed this side off, but that is just way too long. I mean, that's going to stand the hearing aid way up off the ear. And I'm going to zoom in here just a little. And as you can see, when we have this in the ear, the tube's too long. I'll zoom back here. So we can see we put the hearing aid on the behind the ear here. That's how that fits. And so that's what you would do at home. And then you take the mold and very gently put it in. And as we can see, we've got the tube running straight up towards the hearing aid. And so now you just simply take a marker. Now listen, you don't want to cut it off right exactly where the hearing aid starts. You got to leave you a little space to push it up above that. And so you put it right up against there, just like this. And you mark it just a little high. Just like that. Now what we do is we can remove this, and you can see the little mark on here. That tells us where the BT is. And with a pair of scissors, simply trim that off. And then we take the hearing aid off the ear. We make sure it's in the right position. We hang it on our hand like this. And you can see that is how it will fit on his ear. You can see how that goes just like that. And then we have the mold positioned so that it also goes inside the ear. You see how that's pointed this way? You can't have it pointed this way and put it on. That's going to point in the wrong direction. Certainly not this way. Sound comes out of this hole. That has to go in his ear like this. And so that means the BTE must be put on just like that. And so you just wiggle. This is a brand new tube, and I can just wiggle that right on there. And that's good. You pull on that, it ain't going to come out. It's exactly the size that you want. And now we're going to put it back in the ear. Put the tube in, the mold in first. Make sure everything's seated. That goes right back there. And that is an absolutely perfect fit. I left that mark in place. That'll rub off there. But you can see that when you mark it properly, that goes just high enough. What you don't want is that tube to be long enough so that it makes your hearing aid sit up off your ear. If you have it too long, it sits up like this and it doesn't look right. If you have it too short, it pulls down. And let me tell you something. You get this too short, and in about a week, you're not going to wear that hearing aid because of a nice little blister and cut up there. That needs to sit there just comfortably and just high enough. And that is how you retube a behind-the-ear hearing aid. Thank you, Sean. Robert Hutchcraft, Advanced Hearing Technologies, how-to videos.